Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Sam Zagar. We're hopping into another YouTube reading. We're going to be reading for a 3-5 Splenic Projector. It took me a while to get to their reading, so their intake form changed a little bit, but they asked me to take a look at their connection chart with a partner. They've said that they are currently separated, but they would like my perspective on the relationship a little bit. In general, they also talked about feeling unsuccessful, unrecognized. They acknowledged that their relationship felt very, very heavy and that they felt unrecognized in it. I'm going to show you the main chart that we're going over. And I'm just going to hold my awareness that the partner that they were talking about is a 2-4 emotional MG. But I don't want to put too much emphasis on the partner rather than the person that I'm actually supposed to be reading for. So let's just talk a little bit about relationships in general. It's hard for me to talk about a relationship when I don't have the people in front of me to observe them, and I don't have a lot of context for what has happened. I don't like speculating. I don't like projecting. And it's not fair of me to say whether either one of you is actually acting as your true self because I don't have enough information to discern that. But when I look at the Splenic Projector's design, if this was my friend who was telling me that they're separated from someone that they didn't feel recognized with, and that in general their relationship felt really heavy, I'd probably want to talk them through what heavy meant. What does heavy mean for this person? If heavy is the word that they use to say, like, the relationship wasn't feeling good, it was feeling heavy, where does that come from? When I acknowledge that this projector is only 3 centers defined, there's a lightness in that they're not that weighted down by their own definition. If we have 9 potential centers, it's almost like I'm putting a rock in the ones that have definition. So I put a rock in 3 out of 9 centers here. The person still got 6 undefined centers, are still floating along. Whereas their previous partner has 6 defined centers. 2 of those defined centers are the root, which creates a heavier anchoring, grounding, potentially, effect. But then I also had a defined solar plexus. So we also could be talking about the fact that the emotional climate of the relationship felt heavy. They were with someone who had the channel of emoting. So that's individual emotional definition. Individual definition, period, has not a heaviness, but a melancholy to it, a bluesiness. But if I take an individual emotional channel, not only do I have melancholy as a baseline, but then I have highs and lows on top of that. Emoting can experience some pretty deep lows. Emoting is also provocative. So this projector was dating someone or married to or whatever. This person was in relationship with someone who's here to provoke. Now, at least there was a compromise channel for that because, well, their partner had emoting. This person has a hanging 55. The hanging 55 means that, like, there is some awareness of their own spirit, but their partner really, like, provokes it out of them. In the separation, what feels lighter? Is it not having the emotional definition around? Is it not having the root definition around? Is it the fact that when this person combined with their previous partner, they made a 9-0 relationship? All 9 centers became defined and as a single definition. I typically call a 9-0 a happy trap, but I don't know if this is a happy trap. It could have just been a trap. It sounded like it was a bit of a heavy trap, not so much a happy trap. This person spoke about their education. They're well educated, which I'm not surprised, being a projector. But they also talked about some passions. So there's like what their education is, but then there's what they have an interest in. And so the interest fell more in line with the animals, in particular with horses. They used language that said it's hard to take care of the horses because of the financial part, and they have ways in which they can work to make more money to take care of the horses, but that work is not very satisfying. But satisfaction isn't much of a word for this person. And I've just realized you are a cross of consciousness. I'm also a cross of consciousness. We're both too young for this cross to be that significant in our lives. But as we mature, as we age, we'll fall more in line with what that cross is talking about, hopefully. And cross of consciousness, I mean, to sum it up, it's really about consciousnness. It's really about being awake, being aware. I don't want to call it like thinking about things. It's not a cross that's meant to think about things, but it is a cross that has two gates in the head center. A gate in the sacral and a gate in the throat. And it's all collective, all shared. So this person has a collective cross, a tribal channel, an individual channel. The individual channel is in particular in the centering circuit. We have a design of needing to be first, of wanting to be first. And we also have someone here who should have a very strong immune system and a good ability to create tribal propaganda. Channel of Surrender is a business and marketing channel, and it's also the channel of the immune system. And if it's confusing for those two things to go together, hear the phrase, a wealthy tribe is much more likely to be a healthy tribe. Access to material, access to resources can greatly improve the health and immune system of a family. That means I have someone who has a natural gift with health, with immunity. And they also have a natural, consistent identity, but they're not hugely aware of it because there's only one gate and therefore channel coming off of the G center, but it's only half conscious. The most conscious aspect of this person is the conscious channel of surrender. I've also got someone with hope motivation and a quad left. We're assuming quad left. They gave me a 15-minute range for a birth time. And I have a first tone and a third tone in there. So that first tone could retrograde to a 6. And the third tone could move ahead into the 4. So we're on a bit of an edge here for assuming that this person is a quad left. They're well educated. They're not that successful. They're struggling with financial success. So their education is not necessarily converting into recognition and compensation. Why did you go to school for the things that you went to school for? Were you actually interested in it? Did you think it was going to get you something? This hanging 48 has my attention. A conscious hanging 48, which means that it's like you're aware of your own insecurity that you don't have enough information. Put that with an undefined head, and that is like your personality, sun, and earth, the undefined head gates. You have the potential, I don't want to say that you have the potential to be very caught up thinking that you need to learn more. and being relatively insecure about taking action on the things that you do know. As the third line, there's obviously some there's probably some burnout from some trial and error experiences. But the trial and error, it doesn't matter if things don't work. It matters whether or not you learned the lesson of why they didn't work. And you're kind of asking me a little bit why I don't know if you're asking why the relationship didn't work. Maybe you're just wanting me to talk about you like in relation to your relationship. But to be this design and to want to be recognized in a relationship, you don't want to be judged for your errors. You don't want people to criticize you unnecessarily for your trial and error learning process. And you also want people to know that just because you broke the bond doesn't mean things are done or over. So we don't shame you for messing things up. And we also don't shame you for wanting to try things again. I won't shame you for like getting back together with your partner. You said separated. You didn't say broken up. Separated could imply marriage. Separation would imply marriage before making it to divorce. But it also could just be like, you know, Ross and Rachel, like, we were on a break. Are you on a break? So third line, are you on a break? Oh, what's also interesting is your personality north and south node are third lines, and your design north and south node are fifth lines. You're very 3-5. You got a lot of 3. Like a lot of 3. You got 6 3s just in the personality side. You have 8 3s overall. Quite a few 5s. 6 5s, 8. Whoa. So you're dealing with a lot of projections as well. A lot of people assuming. What are they projecting onto? Your routine, your feeling, your shock, your intuition. People project onto you a lot rather than recognize you. I think you're pretty tired of having people who don't know you tell you who you are, tell you who they think you are. Are you here because you trust me to say some different things? Like, I'm not devil's advocate, but am I meant to be like a voice in the void that pulls you to one of the other sides? Like, do I have the power to recognize you in a way that has you letting go of inferior recognition from other people? And it's not recognition. It's like from the projections of other people. You're sick of the projections. You're here for the recognition. Can I see differently? Can I see you differently? I mean, I have a little bit of like a bias on this because I'm also quad left and splenic and channel of surrender and a conscious third line and a cross of consciousness. I'm curious about I'll be all over the map here a little bit, but you brought up the horses, not being able to afford them without like needing to take on something extra, except you didn't say you weren't responding to. You said it's not satisfying you anymore. Satisfaction is a weird word for you. I'm looking at your ego. I'm like, okay, this ego is giving or gave you some energy, gave you power in order for you to access something. But do we no longer care about the thing that was being accessed? Like, are you not having the energy to do the grooming because your relationship to the horses is changing. Your relationship to the animals is changing. Is there a different dynamic you want to have with the animals that isn't I don't know, like travel, like I don't know what the right word is there. This isn't my wheelhouse per se. I don't know a lot of horse lingo, but what is the kind of relationship that you would like to have with, and I don't want to just pick on horses. You brought up more animals than that, but like what ideally for you is a regulating situation, a rewarding, a successful, and empowering, like if the money wasn't the problem, how would you interact with the animals? What kind of time would you spend with them? What activities would you be doing? What do you want to learn about them? I want more information there because I want to know what your ego cares about. I want to know what it has the will for. And it's likely something deeply personal. So what was special to you about the relationships before when your ego was still giving you the will? And if you're losing the will, then the relationships just don't seem worth it. But it's not like it's not worth it, I'm over it. It's more like it's not worth it in this state. So how do we make it worth it? What are the parameters around it that need to change? And right there, when I'm like, something needs to change, there's immediately this feeling of like, so I will go change it. But we're hope motivation. I want you to have the awareness of what you want to change, but I don't know if I want you to do anything about it. I want you to be aware. I want you to acknowledge it. I would even love you to like speak it out loud, but don't do anything. This is an interesting thing. Hope. Hope is waiting. Give it up to God. Its transference is guilt, which is I'm responsible. I gotta fix it. But hope is like not my responsibility. And it's so funny because when we say that, like, oh, it's not my responsibility, like people could attack that so quickly, but those people aren't going to be hope motivation. That it's not my responsibility is appropriate for the people who are hope motivation. It's not appropriate for the rest of us. You're a waiter, a hopeful waiter. How did the relationship that just ended, or the one that you're separating from or separated from, how did it start? Did you ever really feel deeply recognized by this person? How long were you together? What was it like to evolve? And also, do you think that the person you were with is actually their true self? When I looked at their chart and I'm like, okay, emotional 2-4 MG, like, are they actually satisfied? Do they follow their own authority? Do they ride out their wave to wait for clarity? Because if they don't do those things, then they would be quite dysregulated, which would be really hard for you to spend time with them. You got a hanging 37. This is interesting. You have a quite defined ego. The only gate not activated in the ego is 40. And 40 is the diehard worker of all ego gates. It's like, oh, I will provide. I gotta provide for the people, provide for my family. I've got to bring home the bacon is really what gate 40 is saying. And gate 40 is also associated with the stomach. I love the phrase bringing home the bacon because it talks about what we're going to eat. Tribal stuff is very like, what are we eating? Is the family taken care of? Are we surviving? Do we have our resources? You are looking for the resource of who will provide the money. But you have the hanging 37, which means you have an openness to providing affection. It's like you have the gratitude side of the channel. It's interesting how we kind of like smush words together, but this is the receptive side, the gratitude side, almost the more feminine side. It's kind of like the, you know, one of you is in a more like masculine role of the provider. I will work, I will make the money, I'll bring home the bacon. Like 40 has a naturally slightly more masculine vibe to it. Whereas 37 is like, thank you for working. Thank you for bringing your resources back home to us. I appreciate you. Like, I love you. Would you like a hug? You know? It's more emotional. It's more solar plexy and less ego-y. It's a little bit more feminine to be in the 37. I see you as a like quite feminine half of your relationships. Are you recognized for that though? Or did your partner want you to be like tougher or more of a worker or more of a go-getter or more responsible, more like, did your partner recognize you at all for your mechanics? Or were they projecting onto you like based on what they wanted in a partner, not based on what you are? Oh, that one hurts. I'm sorry. Wet kitchens environment. Alchemy, diversity, transformation. Why do I feel like you're not spending enough time in your proper kitchen's environment? It's not just any kitchens. It's not just like a busy place. Like, I don't want to send you to places that will overwhelm you or overstimulate you. But you are meant to be where things are happening. Did things get too stagnant for you? Are they too stagnant for you? Were they too stagnant for you? You recognize that and you're making movements to freshen things up. Is that why you're currently separated? And you're hanging gate 5, 5.2, and then 5.5. Okay. So we got a couple hanging 5s. What is your routine? What is your ritual? And I don't mean like, what are your habits? I mean like, if I block you from doing this, it will deeply dysregulate you. What has to happen in order to totally take you out of a flow? This is part of how we figure out what the routine and ritual is. What keeps you you? What keeps you going? What keeps you regulated? What is the flow that's natural for you? Are you attuned to a circadian rhythm? Are you attuned to weather, seasons? Do you have... Like, I don't want this to be like, what is the routine? Is in like, what's your schedule? I'm not asking what the schedule is. Because if I got rid of your schedule, it's not like you'd be deeply dysregulated. Like, you might have to recalibrate. But like, if I don't feel the sun, if I don't put my hands in the dirt, and I'm always excited for a seasonal change about 6 weeks before it happens. Like, if I don't feel like I get to experience seasons, like, I have to go outside and acclimate myself to the weather pretty consistently. And again, I'm like, it keeps us healthy. Anything else speaking to me? Theist trajectory. You're meant to become a believer. You're meant to become a believer. A believer of what? Your hope is going to show you something. What are you meant to be a believer of? And maybe I need to approach that question from a different side. What don't you believe in anymore? What have you learned is not true? What doesn't work? And these could be simple things, like you no longer believe that your relationship was going to work. You no longer believe in the intentions that your partner had. You no longer believe that when we make a commitment in the moment that it lasts for the rest of our life. Like what are some of the beliefs that have shattered for you? And what are some beliefs that you don't know if they're true or not, but you're hopeful that they might be? What do you hope for yourself? What do you hope for the planet? I want to acknowledge that this design can feel very powerless. There's only one motor. This is a design of a waiter, waiting to be recognized, waiting to be invited. There's not a lot of this person doesn't push, they don't shove, they don't force, they don't. And I can see how this design would feel disempowering to have if you compare it to other people's designs. And if you're comparing yourself to your previous partner who had a very different design from you, you might feel disempowered to be this thing. But I want to acknowledge that I think that's a limitation of a perspective, because surrender is very significant. And you are a channel of surrender twice, which makes this even more significant. But can you let go? Can you surrender? Can you wait? Can you be patient? Can you wait to be recognized into something that feels much better than you currently believe things can feel? I don't know how much experience you have of things actually feeling amazing. I don't know if you believe that they can. And yet you're here to become a believer, theist. Stay in your hope. Stay surrendered. And there's a funny thing. I almost said don't try too hard, but that's not true. I want you to try really hard. I want you to try really hard, because you're one of the only people that can. If you don't try, we don't create, we don't adapt, we don't innovate. Look how much 3 you have. Third color environment, third color determination, third color perspective, third tone perspective, third line profile. You really are here to try. And when you fail, don't lose your hope. I think that's the hopeful thing I want to end on. On to the next one.